I'm here with MacKenzie Wilson from SingleKey. So MacKenzie, you've been on the podcast before. Yeah. You live in Calgary, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And what's your official title at SingleKey?
Oh, that's a good question. A director of customer engagement. It's, in this kind of startup world where we are, a lot of us wear multiple hats. So there's more to it, but generally that's the title on paper we'll go with as in LinkedIn.
Yeah, I feel like I see you everywhere there. You're running the podcast, you're putting out blogs, you're my main connection point into the SingleKey world. So I feel like you're like a floater there doing a lot of different things.
Yeah, we've got a really dynamic team and a lot of us are kind of co-running different initiatives. So in short, partnerships, hence probably how we got connected, in-person events west of Manitoba. I kind of head all the content with our creative team. I've got an amazing team with Karen and a few others that help us bring all the content together. The podcast. I just started a podcast 2 weeks ago, actually. We can talk about that later too. And then a Facebook group I run on the side. And
now that's the biggest Alberta landlords Facebook group, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's called the Alberta Landlord Community. We're coming up on 5,000 members now. And it is the quickest way to learn from a fire hose anything and everything you need to know about being a landlord. And even saying that, I still see questions and scenarios that come up that I would never even thought of. So if you're not in one in your province, by all means, that is the best way to get yourself educated, I think, is a critical need is to connect with people doing the same strategy that you're doing.
Yeah. Cool, man. Okay. So in this podcast, I want to ask you about Canadian credit reports, then international credit reports, which is a new product that you guys have, which I'm super excited about. Some of the other new SingleKey features that I think landlords would be super excited to know exist and then apply to their business. And then also about the Calgary real estate market, get an update from you, what's going on over there. I feel like Calgary's definitely a hot market and hot topic amongst Canadian investors. So I definitely want to ask you about there and see what's true, see what's not true, and get a boots on the ground picture of what it's actually like investing there. Cool?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, so Canadian credit reports. I just saw that you guys came out with a dual credit report that pulls both TransUnion and Equifax, whereas I think the traditional SingleKey reports just would pull Equifax. So what is the difference between Equifax and TransUnion? Is one of them more reliable than the other? Why do they tend to give different credit scores? Any of that stuff.
All right, this is a full 5-minute conversation. So I'll break up into a few things and just ask me questions along the way so we can kind of get it out for the audience.
Okay.
So two exciting things for us from the SingleKey side is we have now direct API access to both TransUnion and Equifax. When we first started up in the world of being SingleKey, even a year and a half ago, we were using a third-party provider called Certain, which if you look at any other of our competitors in the market, 9 out of 10 of them are using Certain. And Certain is a third party that has their direct API access into Equifax, but they have a very standard format. That's how you'll quickly recognize them. So our kind of key differentiator now is we can get that raw information directly from the bureaus. We've gone through a lot of compliance to get there. And now that we can get that information directly from the source, we have the ability to manipulate it, change it, display it, format it, kind of make it more intuitive for the end user who has probably never seen a credit report before and is not entirely sure what they're looking at. So that would then kind of lead to some of the things we've done to simplify the learning curve is we've color-coded trade lines. So for anyone that doesn't know what a trade line is, that is like an individual financial or credit product that you and I have. That could be a credit card, that could be a line of credit, car loan, mortgage, overdraft on a bank account. It could be any kind of financial product. Each of them are going to have their own trade lines. And so really there's 3 kind of statuses you want to look at. The ideal one is they're green, where they're current, they're paid up to date, there's nothing outstanding. There's one that's overdue. So they've perhaps gone 30, 60, or 90 days past the original due date of that invoice. Or there's the worst case scenario, it's red, which is kind of like following the traffic light pattern that we're doing here. Red is it's gone to collections, the creditor, the bank, the car dealership, whoever it's given up, and they've written off that loan. They sent a creditor after this individual to hopefully get lucky and collect some funds back that they don't know that they no longer expect to receive. So that there's that kind of change. We've got a bunch more kind of data points we've vetted in the report just to kind of make it more accurate. Going to your question on, as we're kind of talking the pre-show, what are the differences between TransUnion and Equifax? So I'm going to call these my educated assumptions or guess, just trying to read between the lines of the data, all the data I've seen over the last little while. I've looked at, well over 100 reports. But probably the number one is we had an assumption here at SingleKey, and I think actually really most of us in the industry, that both TransUnion and Equifax were relatively kind of the same beast. Two different competitors, but you'd basically get the same information. And definitely to an extent, there is certainly a decent amount of overlap. But what surprised us was the differences between the two was a lot more substantial than we originally estimated. And my educated guess behind that is there's a cost to reporting to these bureaus from a business perspective, whether you're a Ford dealership, a Money Mart down the street, or whatever business it might be. They're going to probably pick and choose only one place to report to, just from a logistic day-to-day operation time savings perspective, and it costs to actually use these services. So why pay double the fees if you don't have to? I would say probably some of the exceptions are some of the bigger banks will probably report to both. But we even saw in one of the scenarios, we looked at one application. It had missed a full mortgage that wasn't on the other side. I can't remember if it was on TransUnion and not on Equifax or vice versa. It was one of the two. It was completely missed. I've seen missed collections. Now, granted, these probably aren't as common. I would probably, if I'm going to give it my educated guess here, maybe 15% of the time, something like that. But probably what was really noticeable that was almost different on every report was the number of inquiries, for example. So when you're looking at a report and you go and apply for that car loan, and maybe you go to Mazda, Ford, and Chevy or whoever, you'll get 3 inquiries in that short period of time if you're looking at financing a new vehicle. Well, the credit inquiries on Equifax versus TransUnion, almost for every report, not only were they different, they didn't even have the same inquiries. So it could have been over the same period of time. I noticed TransUnion did show a greater history versus the other, but they're just generally different. And you're probably thinking, well, credit inquiries aren't really a big thing. They're just a good kind of indicator if someone is seen as credit hungry because they're constantly searching and looking for new products and applying for new credit cards, new cell phones, and you see quite a constant activity over a period of time. That could be a sign that they're credit hungry, which is potentially a red flag. It's not to be used alone, because obviously, really, as we always talk about these credit reports, it's all the information you use together to make that informed decision. Whereas solely basing a decision on just the credit score isn't the best way. You're probably missing really good tenants that are diamonds in the rough. I said a lot. Download that, Anthony, and tell me what you want to ask me.
Yeah. Is one more reliable than the other in terms of TransUnion versus Equifax? I have bias that I think Equifax is more reliable. Am I mistaken in assuming that? I also noticed that TransUnion most of the time shows a much higher score than an Equifax report would.
Yeah.
Is that a common discrepancy you also see?
Yeah, and we noticed that as well, Anthony. Between the two credit scores, TransUnion was typically higher. But I think probably what's really important to note is credit scores, while they look similar on the surface, it's just a number, and typically it's within that same range of 300, 350 to 900 or 850 depending. Every credit score is going to be is completely different. And each of these bureaus will probably sell a dozen different types of credit scores, because what the bank might look at as one of the most important factors is I don't know, one piece of the credit score, they might give that a greater rating, therefore affecting or changing the result of the credit score. Whereas perhaps the money market doing a 14-day or short-term loan, or even for doing a financing a vehicle purchase, are all going to weigh different components of the credit score more important to their industry need. And therefore, there's actually dozens and dozens of credit score out there. And it's probably more common that the credit scores that you're comparing from a Borrowell, from Credit Karma, from all these different self-serving services, or even the credit scores you can pull directly from your major banking, if it's BMO or RBC, they're all actually going to be different. I would say it would be uncommon for them to be alike and having the exact same rating system or weighting system on all the different variables below the surface. Going back to your question about, is there one bureau better than the other? I would say in terms of probably market share, Equifax is probably still leading TransUnion. But to be truthful, I think they're almost pretty comparable. I think the bonus now is with the ability to pull both at the same time if you want. And while the tenant only has to fill out one application and not have to do it individually, as what used to be set up in the past as different independent credit checks, and we do a discount for that, of course, if you're going to buy two, really gives you full breadth of the information. And we've also structured our flow too, where you can pick and choose whichever one you want to use first. And let's say you get a short list, and you go through your 3 or 4 applications or whatever it is. You run your credit checks, and let's say, you know what, I really like John. Jane's close, but you know what, you can go back and upsell, or not upsell, but go up and add in the other bureau down the road. And I think it's still, I can't remember what the price is, but you can do that after the fact, not bother the tenant, and get more information to, if you're not happy with what you're seeing, or they're kind of on that gray area whether you go with them or not, well, you can add in a second bureau to strengthen that, or just do both right off the hop. So yeah, that's kind of the take on it. I'm trying to think of what else there was. The 2 other interesting data points I would say, if for us as homeowner or rental housing providers and landlords, is we can pull the billing address, and then in some cases, the employment information from the bureaus. So when, let's say, BMO will then report a mortgage in your name or my name, they'll also report our employment history or our current employer, because that's part of the mortgage application. That's how that information will show up in the bureaus. And then when you go and open up a cell phone, say at Rogers or get home internet, the billing address on those invoices is the billing information that then Equifax and TransUnion collects and builds in their database. So the really powerful tool for us is getting these previous billing addresses and then cross-referencing it with the rental address history on the application. And if you get a match, now you've gone from potentially hearsay from the tenant, because it's tenant supplied information on the application, to a very high degree of confidence that the information they are providing is in fact true, because now they've used as a billing address at Rogers, or their car payment is their billing address, or whatever the institution that supplied the information. So that kind of comes back to this I don't want to call it a game, but your strategy when you're doing your screening process is of sucking in all these data points and cross-referencing and getting a high degree of confidence that everything is in fact accurate and truthful. And then therefore now you're making a decision on accurate information, and therefore your decision will be more informed.
Yeah. So the report where it's verifying the billing address versus their stated residential address, that they supply the information, does it show anywhere on the report that that's been verified as a match?
Yeah. So so with our newest version of the report, since we came from like the really old one to the whole new format, that's one of the features that we've added in. So we've automated a best practice in a sense. So then it will say on the rental application, on that current section for that address, we'll give a green check mark saying, hey, this matches one of the credit bureaus if we get a cross-reference. Now, a caveat here, and what I noticed just looking at mass at the hundreds of dual reports that we pulled at SingleKey, and I just was looking at all the information. I am gathering, and this is kind of like another insight, that this is all human input information, and there could be different formatting of an address. Perhaps someone said avenue is the full spelling of the word. Perhaps someone did AV or AVE as one of the shorthands. So while we try to make it easier and easier for someone that's kind of a new user that's never seen credit reports before, always do all of your own due diligence and cross-reference everything yourself. Just because it's not perfect, the data that we pull from Equifax and TransUnion isn't always as clean as well. So it really makes a lot of sense to go and look at the rental history versus the billing address. But short answer, yes. We've now made that match. If we do see that correct match, we'll highlight that on the rental application for you.
Okay, cool. So in the past, I've always just used your basic tenant background report, which uses an Equifax credit checks. But now you guys have these dual reports, and I think the cost is still $25 plus tax to do the basic Equifax one. But now, would your recommendation be, best practice is to pull the dual report, which is going to loop in that TransUnion credit info, and I think that one's what, $40 plus tax to run?
Yeah, $39.99 is 40% off. I'll be transparent. I'm biased. I'm a data nerd, which is probably why I've ended up to where I am now in my career. I love this stuff. So my ability to get more accurate information, I think it's worth it. Now you've kind of got like the decision making is as you're filling your vacancy and you're going through the different steps of let's call it like a vacancy funnel, if you will. As you get more applications in, you've got to kind of pick and choose what you want to run on. But I personally like it, and I also noticed that the billing addresses weren't always quite the same across two of the bureaus. So by running both, you're going to get the ability to match more of that rental history, which if you had to rank really important things, one, it would definitely be how they manage their finances, which may or may not be descriptive of that credit score that they've been displayed. But secondly is I want to ensure the information on that rental application is accurate, because the biggest red flag for me is you're trying to start a brand new long-term relationship off on the right foot. And if you don't got confidence, or even worse, you found misinformation or omissions of information, like that to me is like, what are they trying to hide? They're not willing to tell me up front. And I always tell tenants, and they go, hey, like, I don't need a perfect credit score. I just need to know you're honest and that you pay your rent. Like that's just simply the thing here. I've got a mortgage. I've got property taxes, insurance. This is all part of the game of how the ecosystem works. And honestly, 9 out of 10 tenants get it. They understand it. And when they go, yeah, you know what? I made some silly mistakes here in my 20s. I ran down my credit score, whatever, lived and learned. But I can go in and we can see how many payments, because we give you the full information, the same information that a bank would have before they lend on a mortgage. You're getting the same information as a homeowner or a landlord on an individual. And you'll, in some scenarios, if this is an established tenant and they've been in Canada, have had credit for a while, you might get 60 months of credit history on a credit card. And you can see that, you know what, there's been no late payments recently. They've been paying all their bills on time for the last 6 months or a year. But 2.5 years ago, they went through a divorce. Cool, that makes sense. They got damaged. Their credit score got damaged because of a life event. It wasn't indicative of their financial habits. And then now all of a sudden, you've got probably a really great tenant that will make for a great long-term relationship. That's also grateful that you've chosen to rent to them, even though the credit score wasn't perfect.
Got it. I want to give you guys a shout out because your fraud check or criminal record check, I'm not sure the exact wording on the credit report now. It came up the other day, just about 2-3 weeks ago. I was qualifying somebody and their name popped up in 5 or 6 different little articles and stuff about all sorts of fraud where they were stealing. Yeah, they were stealing mail from Canada Post and doing some sort of fraud. There was some weapons charges. There was some, I think, drug stuff going on, possession of drugs. Just all these things came up. Yeah. Now, the part that I wasn't entirely sure about is it was a very common name, like both first and last name, that could be found by many people across Canada. And when I followed all of those links and then tried doing my own Google search when it came up, I couldn't see any photos of the actual person. So I wasn't sure if it was actually the right guy, because what I've noticed on some other SingleKey reports is it does a great job of finding whatever social media accounts it can. But sometimes, for example, I've seen it maybe 1 or 2 times where it pulls the LinkedIn profile of somebody else with the same name.
Yeah.
It puts it on the report. So I was like, I don't want to condemn this guy to being a criminal and these things being linked to him. But I just wanted to bring that up and ask you about it.
Yeah, so it's a third-party provider that we use, and the way it works is we have like a switch on the back end here at SingleKey to determine how likely of a match should we display to you as the end user, right? And back, and this is even before I started at SingleKey, it used to be a little bit more forgiving, like, hey, we'll display information. Let's say if there's an 80% chance of a match. Well, we want to be, what would be the right word for it? Helping everyone in the rental industry. And we don't want to be inadvertently mislabeling someone with an incorrect match, like kind of what you just brought up. So we've for a very long time, we've had a very stringent, like it almost has to be a perfect match for it to display something. But at the same time, especially some of the more common names, it is a name search based on, there might be some other metadata at play, but it very well, since it's done by a third party, could have a mismatch. So again, back to your point where our job here is to give you as much information as possible. At the end of the day, the responsibility still lies with you, the end user, to do your full due diligence and review all the pieces of information that you're looking at to ensure they're accurate. Also, I've had people say, hey, by the way, MacKenzie, this didn't bring any information up, or it, like you said, has a mismatch. Does that mean the credit score is not accurate? They're two completely different sources that we've just brought together on a comprehensive report for you. So if one is inaccurate, does not deem the other part of the report inaccurate. Just as a heads up.
Yeah.
Trying to understand it, because we're pulling from a lot of different sources. So.
I will say the approximate age of the person completely matched up, and then their past residential history, it was showing, some charges were laid in British Columbia and then in Ontario, and that followed kind of their residential history of where they lived. Okay,
so there you go. See, that's smart. You're reading between the lines and not just taking it at face value, and that's exactly what I'm trying to highlight. So good.
Yeah. And then it also just tied in with the gut feeling I had about the guy at the property, which was just kind of a little bit sketchy. Like something just seemed a bit off.
Sense going off, right?
Spidey sense, pure gut feel. I could be totally off, but when that came up, like it literally didn't surprise me at all. I was just like, okay. And it wasn't the first time that I had seen a criminal record hit come up a few years ago. And I just shared this on the Hart Togman podcast I did. I saw a guy, 3 hits came up, and it was news articles for a guy that had been arrested for like drug dealing and weapons charges and all that stuff. But then he had actually escaped prison when he was 19. So there was a prison escape story on this guy.
No way.
And I guess, he was legitimately out of prison when he came to go see this property that I was filling. But,
dude, and that's wild.
And then, and ever since then, I've actually had some faith in that, because I just thought to myself, okay, there's no way that these guys are actually pulling a legit criminal record check. I just didn't think.
No, and I can, I'll share a link. I'll give you, as the things we mentioned in the show, I'll give you a bunch of information to drop into the show notes. There is a page on our federal Canadian government website, and it talks about the justice system. But specifically, it talks about the lack of interoperability between the different jurisdictions at the provincial level, where criminal records are kind of managed and done at. That it's a manual process. There isn't, and that which blows my mind in this day and age in 2024, that we don't have a clean federal cross Canada system that shares records. They definitely do share records between police jurisdictions, but it's manual. It's not like a, click and search instant result kind of thing, which means that we can't pull information across the board, which is not ideal. But I'll share that. And on a random side note, the podcast I just started, I have a co-host. He happens to be the guy that works at RentPad, and I think he's the founder. So it sounds like you're in good company there in your last podcast.
Yeah, cool. Do you want to shout out your guys' podcast name in case people want to tune in for that?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a little bit more raw. It's kind of less unedited. I do a quick kind of AI edit with some of the tools we got out now, but it's supposed to be anything and everything. It's co-hosted with myself and Hart Togman, who's the CEO of Rent Panda, and we just talk about anything that's on our mind. It's every Thursday for half an hour on Thursdays. So,
would it be safe to assume that it's largely centered on tenant screening?
It's as if the whole premise of the show is like, if someone wanted to sit down and listen to us at a bar, or we're sitting together at a conference and at the table, and me and Hart, we're just kind of going back and forth talking about, because we're self-proclaimed landlord nerds. Like, I love this industry. Someone told me that 5 years ago, I would never believed you, but that's kind of, it's just, if you're to be a part of that conversation and you're brand new and you've got questions, do you want to hear someone that's kind of been down the road with the bumps and bruises, the lessons learned? This is that kind of podcast where we just talk about what's on our top of mind, what's the challenges going on. And so we talked a little bit about that impact on the interest rate, or really the lack of, but that changed last week. And then the first week we're talking about, I can't remember, but that's the whole thing.
Cool, man. Yeah.
One of the episodes coming up, I really want to dive into, I think there's a big tidal wave change coming with how much AI's changed in the last while, that it's going to make it more challenging in the future to detect, unfortunately, fraudulent information on applications, because you could probably get AI to write you a letter of employment now that sounds really convincing. You can probably get AI to create an image of something that supports perhaps a false narrative. So I think this need to be more and more informed and do really strong due diligence is only going to grow. And I think we're trying to position ourselves here at SingleKey to be that leader in providing the right information at the right time during the tenant screen process.
Yeah, fair point. Can you actually talk to me about the document fraud check that you guys are now providing as part of your new report as well?
Yeah, for sure. So what it does is we have an AI partner that's going to go in and scan the document, and we'll be able to detect things like if the document's been photoshopped, is there a mismatch on font sizing, color, placement, the color tone of the white part of the PDF of the page. Is it mismatched there? Is it pixelated? We'll also look at all the metadata on the file itself. So the create date, the modification date, the what do you call it? The software that rendered or generated the PDF, the author. All these little data points get changed and manipulated if someone goes and uploads a bank statement to an online PDF editor, and then they export it, and now it says ilovepdfs.com was the author in the file. So normally, this is definitely a manual process. You have to be a little bit more technically astute. What we're doing now is we're going to run those checks and give you a report on each file that's uploaded to your report. So, and that's another thing that we added too, Anthony, is we allow tenants to upload any documents. So now not only can they upload, proof of employment, pay stubs. If they're a new Canadian, they can upload a Canadian work permit. If they're self-employed, they can maybe do a NOA or something. We're giving them the ability to display themselves in the best light and present the information they need to showcase who they are to help the landlord make that informed decision.
Yeah, wow. So pay stubs, letter of employment, that stuff that'll be super important for those.
Yeah, pictures of pets, all that stuff. And there was one more thing. And we'll also scan the document too. And this will be probably for more popular documents, but is there anything missing on that page that should be there on a regular equivalent thing? So if it's like let's go with a driver's license. If it's an Ontario driver's license, we have a whole thing on like how fake driver's licenses are missing certain parts of those security features on the actual plastic card. We'll have that'll be part of the scan as well.
Oh, wow. And then weren't you mentioning something about taking a selfie and then verifying that the image in the selfie was the same as the driver's license picture?
Yeah, so this is another feature that we have is an ID verification. So already today, you have the ability to collect proof of ID, which is a government issued ID that gets uploaded by the tenant as a picture of their license on the table or wherever they do it. They upload it, and then we just display it to you today. With this next one coming down, which will be released here, both that document scan and the ID check will be released this summer. The ID check is now, it's that same process. If you created your SingleKey account, you've already gone through it as a landlord, where you have to do that selfie, take a picture of your driver's license. It collects both. It does a kind of a cross comparison, and then it will give us kind of, you'll get a bit of a report saying, is this in fact the individual? Does it look like it's been altered? No. Does it pass the age and name? Does the name match on the ID match the name on the application? So we're kind of, again, cross-referencing all these different data points to validate them and ensure that they're true. So what I really like about that is we're starting you guys off in a really strong foundation of documentation for your tenancy. And also, I've personally been in this situation, and actually, Anthony, I mean, you're doing tenant placement on the side. I know it keeps you busy. Have you gone? I mean, maybe you guys are moving a little bit more quicker in Ontario, but I've had a viewing. I've gotten the application a few days later, or like the following Monday or something, and I'm looking at the SingleKey report, and I'm looking at the picture of the driver's license. I'm like, dude, this driver's license is 9 years. It's a 10-year license. It's 1 year from expiring. It's 9 years old. I'm like, is this the person I saw 2 days ago? And I'm like, they've lost 50 pounds. They've shaved their head, whatever it might be. I'm like, I've had a few times where I'm like, I'm actually not even sure. And I just saw the person like the other night, if this is the same person at all. So now we've given you a selfie and their driver's license or the government issued ID in the same documentation. So then again, we're kind of following that adage, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Yeah, we've got the ability now for tenants to order their own reports. We have an ability for tenants to order their own reports. They have their own tenant portal now, and they can show up at the viewing with their report in hand and give it to you. There's a QR code on the front of the page where you can scan with your phone. It'll prompt you to log into your SingleKey account or create one if you haven't used this before, and you'll get that free report added to your account at no cost to you. So a couple things there. The tenants are happy because now they're minimizing the number of inquiries or checks on their credit report. If they're, because everyone might use a different credit checking service or whatever it might be. Well, now they can just give one away for free for the next 30 days. It's recent. And then from your perspective, it didn't cost anything to get a credit report on this tenant.
Yeah, that's a great feature. It would be great if everyone in Canada just used SingleKey and it was like the gold standard for credit checks and for tenants to use, for landlords to pull. I mean, I personally think it is, and increasingly more so as you guys keep rolling out these new features. But just to make things standardized, because constantly running into conversation with tenants at showing saying, I've got my Credit Karma account, my Borrowwell. I just pulled my own Equifax report. Can I send it to you? And I feel bad because they took a hit on their credit score to pull these, and they're going to, send it to me, and I completely discount it. I thank them for sending, but I always let them know I need to run my own report, and then I have to charge them another $25 to do a SingleKey report. So it would be great if this really caught on and became just the standard.
Yeah, I mean that's our goal, right? It's like one of our core values or big purposes here at SingleKey is taking that risk out of renting, not just for one party, but for all the stakeholders in the process, which really comes down to the renters or the tenants and the homeowners and the landlords. So as quickly as we can bring you guys together and build that trust as quickly as possible, it allows both parties to move quickly, because it's already challenging moving. Like moving sucks from all the logistics side of having to pack all your stuff. So the quicker you can secure a great quality tenant, and that tenant has a place to call home, and they can get moving forward with their next steps of moving their services and get their life set up, everyone's happy, and that's a win, right? So that's really kind of the place we're coming from. And so now the tenants can kind of participate and also allow the tenants that genuine, like most of them do, the ones that genuinely care and look after their credit score, well, now they can showcase that and shortlist themselves to the top of your list. If they show up with that credit report already in hand, they get the process. It allows them to really put their best foot forward.
Cool. Yeah. Now talk to me about your new international credit report option. I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, this one's super cool. So it's we've partnered with a company called Nova Credit, and what they've done is they have gone to, I know they've already added a couple more countries in. It's some 20 plus countries. They've gone to each of those financial systems and they have collected the local, they tied into the local credit reporting agency in that country. They've pulled the information, but just as different as each country is in terms of culturally speaking, our financial systems are no different. So they've also taken all that information from every different country and standardized it back to a reporting score that we're used to seeing in North America, which is, again, the Equifax and the TransUnion. So that's really the value of it. What I'm really excited about this too is this will be getting added into our ability, because right now tenants can just order an Equifax or TransUnion credit score on their own. This will be coming down the pipe. There's a little bit more complexities on the dev side to get this set up, which is why it hasn't released yet. But I think for new Canadians coming to the country where it's totally illegal, and I'm sure most people know this, but it's happening anyways. They recognize they're an unknown entity. They're kind of a ghost. You're like, well, I could accept them, but I don't know who they are. I don't have any financial history on them because they just come to Canada in the last couple of months or whatever. Well, for $60, the tenant can pay for it. Bring that instead of the alternative right now is where, you know what, you don't trust me, so I'm going to pay a bunch of months of rent up front. And in some cases, that's a lot of money. I mean, that's $15,000, $20,000 or more. And, for a family trying to start a new life in Canada, that money would go a long way to getting their life going a lot sooner if they didn't have to give it up in advance to help secure a place for them to call home.
Yeah. Okay. So it's $60 to pull it. And how reliable is it? Because it's scraping data from 20 plus different countries, you said?
So it's direct. Nova Credit is directly connected to, the credit bureau in India, for example, the Ukrainian credit bureau. It's pulling from the legitimate sources, but then it's standardized and displays the information in a scoring system that we're already familiar with the Equifax and TransUnion scores here in North America. They show you all the financial trade lines, which is kind of the key indicator about, is this person managing their debt and obligations well? We'll show up a previous billing address as well, or their address in their home country. I don't know if that's really that important. You get their legal name on the credit report, which is a great kind of cross-reference based on either the passport or the Canadian work permit, wherever you've pulled. But then the other kind of important factor is for all the new Canadian immigration that we have here in Canada, the countries that we cover, or they have in Nova Credit, will cover about 80% of all new Canadian applications. So there's a really good chance that new Canadian, you'll get a hit and a return on.
Does it convert the trade line amounts that they have in debt in other countries that they came from? Does it convert it into Canadian dollars?
That's a great question. I'm not going to lie to you because I actually don't know the answer to that. I've only looked at a couple, and I'll take that away and I'll find that answer for you because I don't know. But that's a really good point. Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. So
fair enough. I know it's a new feature, right? Have you personally tried this with anybody yet?
I have not. I have not, just speaking in terms of me being a landlord, because I have my properties here in Calgary. I've got 2 Ukrainian families that are renting from me, but they were renting from me over a year ago before this came out. Okay. So I did it a bit differently, but no, I haven't had the chance. I have no vacancies right now, so I haven't personally tried it. But we have, I will go through and I'm going to go and check some of the ones that we've run for customers. I'm going to go see, I'll check a couple different countries and I'll get back to you on that because now you've got me curious, just as curious as well, because that would be really good to know if it's, I'll say in the Canadian currency, which is probably a little bit more accurate and easy for us to understand versus like a million rubles of whichever country. So well, I've gotten credit reports from other countries. I can't even remember where. I feel like I got one from like an Asian country once, and
I've definitely gotten a Mexican one, so it's completely in Spanish, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at here. I have no idea how to verify this. I couldn't even like copy and paste it in the format what it was to put it into Google Translate to translate it for me.
Yeah.
So it was just based on gut feel of those particular people, and they ended up being great tenants. But so having something like this where I can reliably pull a credit score from Mexico, for example.
Yeah.
And I did see the countries you listed on there, so maybe you can add in some more. But I saw it was a lot of the countries where we're getting a lot of immigration from right now. So Mexico, Ukraine, India, I think it was UK was there as well. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can fill in the blanks. There was some more.
There's oh man, I have to go.
Philippines. Yeah, we don't need to go through them all. But like you said, there's 20 plus countries, and it's a lot. Like I was like, okay, it makes sense that these countries are the ones. I don't know if you guys chose to focus on them or Nova chose to focus on them because
it would have been Nova. They've already added. Ukraine wasn't even on the list when we came out when we come out with this, was it February or March? And that just got added in the last month or so. So Ukraine's on there now. And they got a couple more going on there. But I think, like to your point there, Anthony, the big takeaway is now you have a legitimate apple-to-apple comparison, as opposed to before you're comparing apples to like Sour Patch Kids or something. Like they weren't even the same food group, let alone like, it's just so hard, right? With all that stuff you're talking about. So that's the real power of it. And it's great because again, you get more information to make the decision. And it allows new Canadians or immigrants to bring something they've spent a long time building up in their home country with them, so they're not completely resetting from ground zero. Okay, so that's available on your website now. If somebody wants to run an international credit check. Yeah, and you can also you can't do this in BC, but I'm assuming most of your audience is Ontario based. BC is the one exception where you can't charge an application fee. But in the rest of the country where you can, you guys have the choice to either pay for it yourself or just push the cost onto the prospective tenant. So you go like, hey, great, talking to the family that just got to the viewing. Hey, you know what? Instead of having to pay 3 or 4 months or 6 months of rent up front, how about $60? I can get your credit score from your home country, and if it comes in as you advertise, great. I'm happy to really go on to the next step and do the rest of the due diligence, and that's a win for them. How do you personally handle when somebody asks you if you'll reimburse them for the amount if they're not selected for the home, if they're selected for the home, just in general? I'm sure you've gotten that question before. Yeah. So what I've done is, I guess a step back. So we're at the viewing, and this is typically when the application conversation comes up. The most common mistake I see is people offer the application right at the end of the viewing. And I actually don't offer it. I wait for the tenant to say, hey, MacKenzie, this is great. This is what I'm looking for. This helps me and my wife, or me and my kid, whatever. What's the next steps? If they're asking you those questions, you've got someone who's generally interested in your property. They're like a hot lead. We're nice as Canadians. And so if you're just dishing out applications like they're going out of style, everyone's going to say thank you and accept them, and you're not going to get any responses back. And then you're not going to know who to spend your time on for following up, and you're going to waste a bunch of unnecessary time. So I say don't give out applications, let them ask for it. And then when you send it out, and then I would go off of kind of like my gut feeling. If I've got a great impression with them, I may offer to pay for it. Or maybe it could depend on the market conditions too. And you do need to make sure that you treat all of your applicants the same, because then you don't want to get caught or blamed for what do you call it, if you're unfairly treating one party over the other, discrimination. But what you can do is if it's like and I think most of Canada is in that right now, is where if you've got lots of leads coming in and it's a hot market, is you just go and say, hey, you know what? Right now, you can go and pay for it. By the way, you can reuse this report to your next application. So it's going to help you out, prevents the hits on your credit score. And then, at the time of selection, if we do move forward and we sign a lease, I'll send you an e-transfer back crediting the amount of the report. Happy to cover that. Yeah, cool. Okay, I take the exact same approach. Yeah. If you're selected, we'll reimburse you for it, no problem. If you're not selected, I'll send you the full report.
and you can use it at your next showing. And now with your QR code feature where other landlords can scan it, it makes it even better because I can let them know, look, there's a QR code on there that when you give that to a landlord, you either email it to them or print it out and give it to them. They can scan it and it will show that it was a recently pulled authentic credit report.
Yeah. And a key part of that, Anthony, is we will attach the original credit report directly from SingleKey to your landlord account. So then, because again, following that adage, right, that there's that temptation, especially someone struggling to find a place. I get it. We all got looked after our personal needs first. They may have printed and modified that SingleKey report, so you're not entirely confident it is in fact all accurate and truthful. So now you can exactly scan that QR code and you'll get a direct copy from us added to your account at no cost, which is pretty powerful. And then there was another part I wanted to add to that. But yeah, and we're removing another objection now. Like, well, I don't want to pay. I mean, another common objection is, well, I don't want to run my report because I don't want to pay for 15 credit reports at all the places I'm going to. Hey, no problem. You can take this report now and use as many times as you want for the next 30 days before it expires. And there's no cost to you. So you're limiting all those objections. And if they're still giving you a bit of grief, hey, that's a red flag that they've got something to hide or they're not being fully transparent with you up front.
Yeah. And if they're really excited about the home and actually really want to live there, they're going to have no problem paying that $25 fee.
Yeah. And it's pretty much the norm now that, like, with just the amount of cost that real estate's at these days, most tenants understand it's just part of the game now that landlords are trying to make the most informed decision, especially in Ontario with your guys' LTE boards and 8-month wait lines like that. There is such an extra focus to do it right at the beginning.
Yeah. I was just laughing to myself as you were describing how you run a showing, because just tenants that go to one of your showings just have no idea who they're up against. And what the gamut you're going to run them through. And like a professional tenant just doesn't have a shot. Like, I would love to see that happen.
Oh, man, you screen a lot of tenants too, Anthony. I would rank you right up in the same kind of level of due diligence that I try to run at. But yeah, I just, I mean, I think a lot of people say, oh, there's a lot of professional tenants out there. You know what? It's really how we present ourselves. Do we have a system in place? Are we running a business? And a lot of nuances, like we're trying to read between the lines when we do our due diligence. The tenants are doing the same thing when they look at your rental listing. So, like, does that rental listing have professional pictures? Is it blurry? Is it dark? Is the toilet seat up in the photo? Is a place messy because you didn't even bother cleaning it? Like, and then do you have like 1 or 2 sentences in the description talking about 3-bedroom, 1 bath, close to bus stop, available now, call Mac at whatever. If you have no description of the process, what the next steps are, the requirements the tenant needs to meet to at least be considered for reviewing. Those are the types of ads that the professional landlords that know the system, that know how to game and on all the weak points and the loopholes, they're going to target you specifically. Like, you're asking for it, unfortunately. And yeah, so yeah, I have a particular system for sure. Yeah.
It's true. Yeah. I did a showing just on Sunday in Barrie, and the guy was basically quizzing me on just how professional the landlords are, because the last thing he wants to be stuck with is a landlord that doesn't care and doesn't take care of basic maintenance, and, was checking out how updated the home was and if everything was working. Because he's like, look, no offense, I just don't want to be stuck with the landlord that's, not going to be professional and give me the service that I kind of require. And I was like, I totally get it. We do the same thing on our end, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we just released an article on curb appeal on exactly that, where it's like, I was talking about curb appeal versus a homeowner buying their next dream house, wherever it might be, and how they look at curb appeal versus, which I think is kind of the norm, versus curb appeal from a tenant's perspective to a landlord, and how it's like, if I was going to give it like a grading system, the homeowner is going to probably be dropping easily $500,000 in most places across this country, if not more. They're looking for an A+ curb appeal. Like, they want this property to meet their needs and thing. The tenants are in one step or phase of their life. They might be, moving to a new city. Maybe it's a single individual coming off a divorce. They just need a temporary solution for the next year or two while they get back on their feet or get to the next kind of milestone or journey in their life. they are looking at like, you know what, C+ is great for me, or maybe even a B-. Like they don't have that same level of filter. So that there's an opportunity as landlords, if you're prudent when you're doing your managing your rental properties, is you don't need to spend a lot of money up front for that curb appeal, but you know, it's quality and cleanliness that will shine a lot more than making sure you've got, I don't know, all the land fully landscaped with the perfect potted plants and all that stuff. It's not that. There's such a totally different lens. And there's something I was going with that. I wanted to. I'm sure the tip will come back to me. Anyways, when they come through and to the extent like that tenant asking you all those questions, you know, I often see a common kind of misconception is during the viewing, the property has to be perfectly ready to go and be rent ready. I'm actually of the notion like it has to be clean. It certainly has to be presentable, but there's nothing wrong with a couple of buckets of paint and paint brushes and one room getting redone, because you know what that's going to tell that prospective landlord? Oh, this tenant, this landlord actually cares. Look, they're fixing the property right in front of my face. There's that indirect proof of evidence. It's not just don't take my word at face value and believe everything I say. You know, actions are stronger than words. And here's the property being repaired. There's that actually shows a lot better and probably sells a lot better than having that perfectly pristine property ready to go. I think it's okay to have repairs on the go, because then it shows that you're actually looking after the property.
I totally agree. Yeah. I think money's made from getting leads to the property, even if it's mid renovation, if the grass isn't cut, if you haven't shoveled the driveway and it's winter time and you got to get the showing done. It's like, just get people to the property, let the property do the selling. You know, you can further sell at the property. Hey, I know there's no flooring and the walls look like crap and there's no trim or anything, but there's going to be brand new flooring and brand new trim and this paint color. It's going to be beautiful. Yeah. And people can see you're doing the work and, you know, don't reasonably expect you to just not finish a renovation and make them move into a home that isn't finished, because realistically, they're not going to go through with that lease. So they're going to be okay with seeing it mid-reno. You know, some people will want to see the final product, but in the meantime, you could be missing out on all the people that don't care about seeing the final product.
Yeah, if you're waiting around and not even showing the property. Totally. And I would say in terms of this kind of curb appeal kind of conversation, the curb appeal for a landlord to the prospective tenant is maintenance, care, and upkeep and cleaning. Like, it doesn't take much to cut the lawn, to wipe down the windows, to wash the floors, to whatever. That's the stuff that's curb appeal right there. It's not so important that you've got the brand new, latest and greatest trim or stainless steel appliances in the thing. Like, don't get me wrong, they certainly help. Yeah. But if you're being prudent, the ones that are looking for a quality place to call home, and quality can be shown through upkeep and care. And that's more important to the curb appeal than dropping a bunch of money on whatever.
I hear cleanliness all the time. Like, you know, this home's just so clean. I like how clean it is. Yeah. Because they're so used to seeing so many places that aren't clean.
Exactly.
So like, you just set yourself apart from everyone by just having a clean place when you show it, you know?
Yeah. Like, do you run your business? Do you care? Like, it's an extension, you know, like there's that one tactic I hear. I don't personally do it because I think there's better ways to validate, but some landlords say they'll walk the tenant to their car and say, thank you for the showing. And they'll glance in the car and see how the tenant's kept the car. Full disclosure, my car looks like junk. I've got 2 kids that choose to eat and drop the wrappers wherever. I would not pass the sniff test at all. Yeah. But, you know, but on the opposite side, that's the thing you're using to showcase and set yourself apart.
Yeah. Hart was saying he basically follows them down the whole street. He wants to see like the bus they're getting on. He wants to see how they got there.
I'm going to go on this guy tomorrow. We're recording the next session tomorrow. It's every Thursday. So I'll tell him I asked him that. Why does he follow people all the way down the street after a showing? I'm going to make it really awkward too. I'm not going to tell him I'm going to mention this. I'll do it on the spot while we're recording.
That's great. Yeah. Okay, MacKenzie, talk to me about Calgary. What's happening there? Is all the hype justified? Is it the cash flow kingdom of Canada? What's going on in Calgary?
Yeah. It's you know, we're kind of the anomaly in terms of the Canadian market when everyone generally goes in the same direction, slowing down. We're doing okay in Calgary. We're picking up in Alberta, or vice versa. If we're kind of taking the beating, you guys are actually doing better than us. So. Granted, I'm assuming things are slowing down a bit for you guys. There's a little bit of trepidation with going on. Those interest rates, especially at your guys' purchase price in some of the major places in Ontario, like that's insane for what you guys have to pay for already. So, having that interest rate high, it's no good. But to your point, in Calgary right now, we're doing good. Super low vacancy. We get to say we're cool as you guys now out in Ontario. We got some of those same issues. They just actually, it came out in Stats Canada this morning on the news. We're up 20%. I don't know if it's month over month on permits for multifamilies, new builds in Alberta. So like we are seeing, everyone's seeing the opportunity. There's a ton of money going in there, which will, because we don't have rent controls, that's going to really help in the long run with balancing the market. But I think it's a great opportunity right now. Like we're inventory in the market from a realtor side. I was just listening to another realtor this morning too. We're really short supplied. I think I forget what the balance indicator is, but we're like under 2 months or like 6 weeks or something like that. So it's challenging, but compared to what you guys pay for pricing, there's still great opportunities to invest in Alberta.
So what's happening? Are you just getting a huge influx of population growth driven by immigration? Is it just inter-provincial migration? People leaving Ontario, BC, these more expensive provinces to live in, searching for that cheaper cost of living in Calgary? A mix of everything?
All of the above. It's a perfect time. I've listened to all these stats say we accepted, since the Ukraine-Russian war, we've accepted 70,000 Ukrainian refugees directly to Alberta. So they've immigrated here first. Whereas like the traditional model, if you go back like 5, 7, 10 years, is on the international stage, when people think of Canada, they don't think of Saskatoon, Alberta, Edmonton, and Winnipeg. They think of Vancouver, Toronto, and maybe Quebec. They think of the Ontarios and the BCs first. They hit the country from the coastline. They go, holy F, this is expensive. And then 6 months to earliest, or even a year and a half or to 2 to 3 years, then they emigrate into the more affordable provinces, which is like the Parades and where we're at. What's kind of unique now is we have a big direct influx from that war, from the Ukrainian-Russian war, directly to our province. And we're getting more direct immigration into our province without going through any of the other provinces first, more now than ever. So that's a new change, kind of. And then we did a Alberta's Calling campaign. I'm not sure. Did you see that around Ontario?
I have seen that, yeah.
Yeah, on the bus stop. Well, it ended up being successful, perhaps more successful than what the government was bargaining for. And we have just, I can't remember what the number was, but a mass inflection of new population over like the last year to 18 months. And it's not slowing down. And so we're in a good position in terms of, we still have lots of job opportunities too. The challenge right now is just getting our housing and rental supply inventory up to meet that current demand.
Has the economy of Calgary and Edmonton shifted away from being so oil and gas centric? Is it more diversified now? And how much does it still rely on the oil gas sector? Yeah,
calling a spade, we're still primarily driven by oil and gas. That said, comparatively to 5 to 7 years ago, we've made noticeable improvements to diversifying to other markets, to our own kind of eco hub for tech startups. But at the end of the day, if you had to look at the single largest industry driving our economy, it is certainly still oil and gas.
So would that be the risk, I guess, of going out there? Is that, it's always been kind of a boom bust real estate market. Right now it's going through a boom for sure, but
yeah. You know what? Okay, so this is just my gut. And I'm born and raised, I've lived in Alberta my entire life. Going through like the early 2000s to the early 2010s, what you just described is our typical boom and bust. Like when we're booming, it's like a roller coaster. We're going super fast, but just as uncomfortably going when we're making a lot of money, the recessions are just as fast. But what's shifted in the last like 10 years with climate change, we don't get a lot of institutional or big funds like the teacher's pension plan, for example, dumping money into oil and gas businesses in Alberta because it's deemed dirty, unfriendly, not friendly to the climate. So what's happening is we're not expanding and doing as much new business in the oil patch, and the work that's being done or projects that are continuing are self-funded by the companies themselves. So we're doing just generally a little bit like if this was the same kind of environment in 2005, we would be crushing it right now. It would be just as powerful, but we've more constrained and tailored because of the different, especially with the bigger monies out in the international markets. They're just not coming to Alberta in the same ways they used to in the past. So we're self-funding, and therefore we're not adding as much supply as we potentially could be. And then the other big thing is now there's energy security has become top, forefront again, concerning the Russian-Ukraine war. We had Germany come into Alberta, or not Alberta, to Canada, was it 2 years ago? And I think they bought a solar panel plant out in the Maritimes. But there has been an emphasis or demand and a greater demand for energy security. So energy is still doing this. There's still a high demand for it. We're just generally producing less in Alberta, but it's all self-funded by the businesses. So anyone that's in the oil patch, it's going super strong. It's just not as big as it potentially could be because of just the different environment we're in. But so I think going forward, then if I was to make my crystal ball prediction, is we might be seeing less of those typical roller coaster Alberta oil patch kind of booms and busts, and be more even keel in the cycles of the economy as we go through the ups and downs as they always come.
Yeah. Where do you see Calgary and maybe Alberta overall going in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? So maybe you're like short time frame, medium time frame, long time frame.
Well, so good question, Anthony. And I think this is probably if you're, if I'm reading to where you're leading me, if you've got the Ontario investors looking for somewhere safe to put their money, okay, I'll answer in 2 ways. So one, Calgary City Council just passed and approved a record rezoning. So they're going to blanket rezone the entire city and increase the density factor from a single family unit. And if the lot meets the requirements, so there's certainly still a lot requirement, they can go up to a density factor of 8 single family or 8 separate rental units. That's insane. Like that's an 8x kind of times thing. There's certainly some nuances where it's got to be proper lot size and setbacks and some other things. But they just passed that. So right now, the city administration is going through and redoing our bylaws to take on those new changes. I'm taking a guess that will come into effect sometime later this year, perhaps early fall or even late summer would be kind of my guess. But now that's created a whole opportunity where you can buy land, and now you thought you could only put maybe a basement suite in and have 2 units. If the land's big enough, you could go from number of units from 2 up to 8, which is insane. And now it makes a lot more land opportunities cash flow that wouldn't otherwise have cash flowed. I know in Ontario, I think talking to Hart, that there's a lot of popularity of investing south of the border. And you know what, power to everyone. If they want to do it. But my perceived risk of that is you're now a foreigner in another country. And when the times get going tough, policy comes in, the first things they do is target the foreigners. And it could be COVID 2.0 and you can't get to your property anymore or even be able to see it. Like, there's a ton of risk. I mean, look what we did in Canada. We added the home buyer's tax. All these things are going after what we thought were the problems. Look how we treated the foreigners. Now you're going to be a foreigner in another country. You just got to have that appetite or going eyes wide open that's now an increased risk profile that you're assuming. Are you comfortable with it?
Yeah, that's a fair point. One that I haven't heard yet, actually. Could you see that ever happening interprovincially? So Calgary gets too hot and all of a sudden there's a big movement from people saying, it's all these Ontario investors that are ruining our real estate market and now nobody can afford a home in Calgary. Taxi Ontario investors. Yeah,
I mean, looking at our history, how we vote provincially, we're very right-leaning. Well, most right in Canada, anyways, not as right in some of the states in the U.S. But from a Canadian perspective, we're on the right side of the scale, which typically means less government interference. Let the private citizen and business solve the problems that we have. I'm going to say I don't think so, unless it was in retaliatory to another province doing the same thing to us. I know that there's actually like tariffs on beer, on microbreweries between like BC and Alberta. BC does it to us, and I think, I don't know if we do. I know I don't think we do it anymore, but there's like, it does happen. I don't think so though. Cause I think also we learned out of COVID is blocking the borders and not allowing people to move freely through this country is a bad thing. And that's not good for anyone.
I don't know that some people learned that lesson after COVID, but
So hopefully some of the government officials are listening.
yeah, but, I would agree.
Yeah. I don't think so. I think we're, going through a cycle of that COVID kind of thing. We have some systems and expectations of what's right and wrong and managing. I don't think if you're a Canadian, if you got a Canadian passport, you should be able to go to any province in this country.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And I would also agree. I don't see that really being as big of a risk as investing in another country, especially as the housing crisis gets worse in every country, really. Like we're seeing it in every country in the West, America, all the same. So that is a risk that I haven't actually thought about because I don't know, they seem a little less totalitarian, maybe down
For
there.
sure. I mean, Uncle Sam, they are as capitalist as you can get on the scale. And so they want people's business. Like, the whole, I'm sure you've heard all the rules and I'm sure your listeners have heard all the perks and benefit of owning real estate down there, how fast you can turn over, deal with, unpaid tenants, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you're not American. You don't have an American passport, and it is not very hard for them to change a policy and restrict travel over the border, or worse, hey, there's some new foreign tax thing because we're struggling and we see all these foreigners driving up prices. You're going to have now pay an additional, 15% something. We've already done it here in Canada. I don't see that being any difference from Americans' perspective looking at Canadians.
Yeah, agreed. It's just, as the political winds blow.
Yes.
Cool, man. Okay, that kind of covered. Actually, I'll ask you one last question. What are some of the big talking points in your Alberta landlord group? Any big common talking points or vibe that you're getting there? How people are feeling about real estate, investing in real estate, problems they're facing, opportunities they're getting?
Yeah, good questions. I think if someone's got to make a decision on what to do right now and you're an existing landlord, I think because of the market cycle that we're in, and I love to say I'm an originator of this idea. I'm certainly not. If you're familiar with Don Campbell, he's, I'd say, like the grandfather of real estate. He's got a great book called The Secrets of the Canadian Real Estate Cycle. Absolutely read it. Now is the time to upgrade and improve your current portfolio, would be what I would recommend doing if you had those funds to do so. As opposed to trying to buy in a high demand, low supply market. Why pay a premium for a product if everyone else is going after it? Improve what you have. In terms of fingers on the pulse and just what's kind of going on, we're good in Alberta. Our provincial government hired also a bunch more adjudicators, or we call them TDO officers here in Alberta, tenant dispute officers, for our equivalent of the LTB, our TDRS. Our eviction times right now are less than a month, for about 3 weeks, give or take, and perhaps even faster if it's like an emergency. So, it's just that. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's anything.
Sounds like you got to send some of those guys our way. Send them our way, man. We need them.
Well, I watched.
Ontario is calling for LTB adjudicators.
Yeah, right. I watched, because I'm again, self-proclaimed landlord nerd. I'm that cool here. I watched a webinar with our director of RTRS. Her name's Patricia Toplin. She runs it, and she made a really interesting observation. She's like, I think where Alberta got it right versus, and she didn't say the name, but it's just comparing it to Ontario, was we kept the level of engagement as simple as process through a phone call, as opposed to going to, you guys do video, Zoom, I think, hearings. Yeah. Is that accessibility of everyone, I'd say 99% of the population knows how to do a phone call. And you can do it remotely, you can do it anywhere. It removes that level of complexity that's perhaps drying some of the friction in some of the hearings that you guys are doing over Zoom. And just slowing down the general machine of getting through hearings as fast as possible. And I thought that was a really interesting observation.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah. It's a problem for sure. A problem we got to fix here. But yes. Cool, man. Great catching up. And if anybody wants to follow your podcast or check out SingleKey, do you want to direct them to where they can find you and SingleKey and everything you guys offer?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously SingleKey, landlords.com. That's the website. You guys can go and create a free account. There's no cost to it. You can use our pre-screen tool. It's a great little way. It's a dashboard to organize leads as you fill in your vacancies. The new podcast is called The Report. It's on Spotify, all the good stuff. And then the Alberta Landlord Community, as it sounds, it's on Facebook group. It's got my beautiful face on the front cover page. You can't miss it. Apply over there. If you do apply, mention my name, how you saw me in this podcast. We do provide kind of quite a tight kind of application process to ensure it's an authentic conversation of homeowners and landlords only.
Yeah. Cool, man. Okay. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your time. And we got to catch up again soon when you roll out another 19 features of your credit screening process.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.